welcome to our return to Inside Government shows for the fall 20 semester here at CU Community College. This was done after we've done 4 weeks of forums for candidates. It is about 7:30 on Tuesday night, so you have about an hour and a half to go out to the polls and vote. Just a reminder, you can still watch all of this show on the census, which is just as important as voting, and you'll find out why in a few minutes. But this is a show that is brought to you by the college and shown on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as WDWN 89.1 FM, the college's radio station, and I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. It may happen only once every 10 years, but there is no more important role outside of voting and paying your taxes so that you can play when it comes to your federal government and all governments. It is, of course, the decennial census that not only determines congressional and legislative districts, but funding from Albany and Washington across the board, and a lot more. Currently, the federal government, and particularly the Census Bureau, are rolling out their plans and education efforts to get participation in the process that is slightly different from the past when you were mailed a form. We are delighted to have United States Census Bureau's Amy BROMBOS, who is the project coordinator out of Buffalo, to join us today to tell us what is occurring, what will occur, and why it is vital to get an accurate count. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Long introduction. So for those who may have skipped the chapter of the last 9 years, what is the census?
Well, the census is a complete and accurate count of all of the people who are living and working in the United States. So we do this once every 10 years, years ending in 0. We get one chance every 10 years to get it right. And so it's upon us now. We have just a couple months until the census begins, and we're really working now to try to get everybody informed about what it is, what's coming, why it's important, and how safe and easy that it is.
So this is the 23rd time the census, if this started in 1790, if I'm doing my math correct. The 23rd time the government has done this. Who does it? Is it just the Census Bureau? Is it just that organization within the federal government, or do you spread out with hiring new people and doing other work?
Well, it's the Census Bureau's endeavor, right? I mean, it's governmental. It's dictated by the Constitution, but the Census Bureau is tasked with the 2020 census, with the decennial census. So we have a massive hiring campaign in order to hire all of the people that we need to in order to be able to carry this out.
So part of that is the enumerators, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And
Correct.
So during the show, there's going to be some pop-ups. One is the Census Bureau website,
right,
which will provide you a lot of information on the census, but also the jobs piece, which is the enumerators and other jobs. So when did this process get started?
For the 2020 census, we started.
I mean, literally 10 years ago, but
yeah.
When did you were hired back in February?
In February,
okay.
Right. So I applied for this position in early fall, actually.
Okay.
And so there's quite a process for people from the time of application to the time of hiring, and then orientation, which is very extensive and rather thorough for most of our positions, because it is so important to make sure everybody knows everything that they need to know about the census in order to disseminate the right information to the public.
And you're an educator at the University of Niagara in graduate studies?
Correct,
and
yeah.
What's the specialty?
Yeah, before I started doing this job, I was a professor at Niagara University in graduate studies for educational leadership.
So have you taken a leave from that, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the majority of us who take full-time positions in the Census Bureau for the decennial, we take leaves from our former positions to do this really important work for a year and a half until it's over.
And a lot of people in Auburn and Q County are meeting Christine Hannaford, Tina Hannaford, who we'll hear about a lot more today and through the next couple of months.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's your person here on the ground in Cayuga,
right,
Wayne, Oswego,
right,
and Seneca?
Right. Well, my team consists of about 30 partnership specialists throughout the region. So I am in charge of New York State, everything north and west of Albany.
Okay.
So I've got about 30 partnership specialists throughout that region. And each one has a home base, a home location in the county of which they live, and then several counties that surround that area.
So when does the process for collecting data start?
March.
Okay, and then it finishes when?
End of July.
And so for those who may not, and I'm going to get into a lot of this on data use,
Sure.
why is it important?
Oh boy. Well, There's so many reasons why getting involved in the census is important. I mean, one, the long and short of it is it's mandated. It's mandated by the Constitution.
This is not a choice issue.
It's not a choice.
It's like paying your taxes.
Correct.
Okay.
Everybody is supposed to be completing the census every 10 years.
So do you have an idea of in 2010 what the success rate of the Census Bureau was?
I don't. I couldn't speak to that right now as far as percentage points are concerned. What we do have on the census website, if people were to visit that, is an application called ROAM. And it's a map. It's a large map of the United States, and it's color-coded. So there's different yellows and greens and blues. The darker the blue, the higher the prospected non-response rate would be for that area. And so
there's a place in Auburn that has really royal blue right now. We got to change that.
Correct. So the darker the blue, that dark blue is anywhere from a 30 to almost a 50% projected non-response rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the data used for?
Well, we create statistical summaries of the data that we collect. And it's used for a number of things. Primarily, we're looking at representation, right? So representation based on population and government.
So this data will be sent in March of 2021 to the states, where they will then go through the redistricting process, whether it's congressional. I mean, they'll get a congressional number. They've got to figure out the lines, and the data will help them.
Right. That data will help them figure out what
Assembly.
that representation is going to be. And it's not just congressional. It's not just assembly. We're talking about voting districts. We're talking about school districts.
So on the ballot here in
Cuyahoga
Cuyahoga County, and you got about an hour and 20 minutes to vote right now. One of the items is to redistrict the county legislature, I think, in 2022. Or start that process in there. That data will be used for that as well.
Correct. Right.
It also helps, and it's all about the money someday.
It's all about the money.
So Bomber's Law, this is how federal and state, and I think on your website it says almost $675 billion a year
Correct.
is based on census information.
Right.
So if you're not registered, your community loses out.
That's right. $675 billion annually are distributed in federal funds based on census data. So when I say we have one chance every 10 years to get it right, we have one chance every 10 years for you to tell us who lives in your home, in your region, in your community, in your county, in your town. Where are they, and what are their needs?
So just before you were here, sitting there was somebody who uses community development block grant money. That's important for Auburn or Cuyahoga County or Syracuse or Skaneateles to get their fair share.
Right, and that block grant money comes from census data.
Do you sell the data?
No, we do not sell the data. No. The data is available to the public on the census website. By
Census Tracts, because they still use that?
By Census Tracts, right.
Okay.
Right.
And how do you, so I know this is change, and we'll get to the change of the process from 10 years ago, because technology's changed.
Correct.
How do you keep that data private?
The data,
or response, not data, the response is private.
The response is private. No, the Census Bureau at its foundation is a data collection and security agency. That is what we do, that is what we have always done, and that's what we'll continue to do. So the mission here is to become the leading data collection and security agency in the world, and that's really what we are. The security measures that are taken into place to protect everyone's personal data, they are way above my pay grade to be able to explain to you. But I can tell you that between the firewalls and the encryptions, I am 100% confident in the data and security protection we have for that.
The reason I ask is I think it's either not a 2-week period goes by where we don't read about another major Fortune 500 company who's had a breach.
Right.
Federal government, this is a big issue for the federal government.
It's a big issue for the federal government, and it's a daily conversation. And we have the world's best security protocol administration working on this. This is a top priority, the top priority of the Census Bureau.
So the reason I ask about security, because this process is going to be changing a little bit. It used to be, I remember filling it out when I was a kid. I always loved filling out this form. And later the form went from, I think, long to short to long.
Right.
And then 10 years ago, I filled out a form with my wife. And now we're not going to get a form in the mail initially, correct?
Initially, the majority of the population won't.
Okay.
Some may.
So what are they going to do?
Initially, the majority of them won't. So you'll receive a postcard in the mail at the beginning of March, and it will have a code on it, a code that's authentic to you and your home and your household. and you will enter that code online and you would complete your census online. So this is the first time that that's an option to complete the census online. And of course, we're hoping that the majority of the people will do that, will complete their census online.
So if you don't do it online, then you're mailed the form.
Correct. So you'll receive a couple of reminders before you get the form in the mail. So the initial form will come out the week of, I think it's March 12th. And then
Because April 1st is the date you want everybody, not to overload the system, but
Right.
that's census day.
Right,
am I
April
correct?
1st is the official census day, but you'll have the opportunity to complete your census as early as March 12th or 14th,
Okay.
when those mailers first come out. Yeah.
And will the federal government be able to track what responses are and how?
Yeah, we'll be tracking them in real time on a daily basis. Anyone can go online and look at the
I know
maps.
we've been doing that right now with online vote or early voting in New
Right,
York,
yep.
and they've been looking at percentages. So the federal government will be able to do the.
Yeah, we'll be able to do that. You'll be able to do that, and that's part of our job. So my job is
Oh, so the public will be able to see as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we'll see real live data. So part of my job as partnership coordinator is to go out and establish those partnerships now with the community members who are really interested and involved in making sure that the census is complete and accurate in their region. So for those reasons, we want to make sure that that data is available to those community partners, those trusted voices. So then if we are seeing a lack in any one given area, I can call and say, hey, your neighborhood, this tract in your neighborhood doesn't seem to be getting out there. What can you do? What can we do to help you?
So once you have individuals who fill out the online, if they don't, they're sent a paper form. If they don't respond to that, that's when you send the enumerators out,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
And when does that process start? May.
That'll happen
Okay.
in May of 2020.
So one of the challenges, I looked through, Ms. Hannaford was nice enough to send a PowerPoint. One of the challenges I know that is out there has been those who are in rural areas
Correct.
where internet service is still that dial-up, which is a challenge,
Yeah.
as well as those who can't afford areas of high poverty where there's not an internet connection in the house for some
Correct.
reason. I know you're working with Seymour Library so that people can go to the library and do it. How do you overcome that challenge?
Well, there's a couple things that we're doing. One is, as I said, the majority of people will not receive a paper form right at the beginning, but some will. So we know where those technology deserts are.
Oh,
we
you
know,
do?
Yes.
All right, okay.
We know where those rural areas are. We know where people are highly unlikely to respond via the internet.
So there is a high probability. So let's go back to that dark blue area. As I understand it, there's one area in the city of Auburn in the center. That is likely going to be a high mail area to start with then.
Either initially or certainly
Right
they'll
after
get them
that.
in April, yes. And anyone has the opportunity to call as well and request one when they receive that first postcard. Because we know also some people just aren't comfortable with the technology, or they're not comfortable with going on and putting this information, completing their census online.
And how do you avoid duplication of data? So I'm a guy who'd love to have more money come to my community. What's to prevent me from going out there? Not that I'm going to. I don't want to commit a federal crime, at least not on tape, at least. What prevents somebody from going in there and entering in more data than they should?
Sure. Well, there are a number of quality control measures in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. So when you complete your census, it's very quick. It's a questionnaire. It's not a long survey. There are 10 questions.
So it was 10 and 10. It's still 10 and 10.
Correct.
So what are some of the questions? What are
Yeah.
you going to be asked?
So we will ask who lives in your home, what their relationship is to you, what is their age, what is their gender, whether you rent, own your home. And then, of course, there's the similar questions about each person in your household. So, we say to take about 10 minutes to complete the census. It will certainly take longer if you have a number of people living in your home, but generally it's very quick, to the point.
So I don't want to bring everything to a screeching halt, but the Census Bureau does work other than 2 years out of every 10.
Yes.
So one of the things that we hear a lot about, and maybe more so in the education, the business community, and those who access data, is this American Community Survey,
Right.
which is a lot more thorough,
Right.
but doesn't do everybody. It does slices, correct?
Correct.
So what's the American Community? I know you do housing and other things. Those are not part of this one.
Right.
What's the American Community Survey?
So the American Community Survey is what used to be the long form, what we called the long form, the old census. That's now the American Community Survey. So that goes out to just a certain section of the population, and that's done annually. So it's important to know that we do other surveys besides the census. And some people in your community may receive a questionnaire or a survey that's not the 2020 census, that's still coming from the Census Bureau. So it's important to know that there are other things out there besides the census.
So if it says Census Bureau on the top, this is not Publishers Weekly and all
Right.
the others where they're asking you a whole lot. This will literally denote the United States Census Bureau.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's also important to make sure that people are aware that if you have a question as to whether or not it's a valid form, questionnaire, or survey, that there are protocols where you can go and check that out to make sure.
So what does that survey tend to ask? What is that looking at?
That asks a lot more information about income, about home ownership, about more specific information about the people in your home. The things that if you've done the census for many years, it would be very familiar to you.
So that in part is a tool that the federal government looks to use, and they do give that data. Anybody can access
Sure,
it
yeah.
to see trends.
Right. So anyone can go on the census website.
Including move people where people are emigrating to.
Correct. Right. So anyone can go on the census website. They can take a look at that data. There are many portals on there, that you can access and pull out. That comes from a number of the different surveys that we do, not just the census.
So the 10 and 10
census.
are the same questions, 10 and 10, the same questions in 20.
Correct.
They are. There's no additional questions.
No, there's no additional
So
questions.
I know there was a challenge on a citizenship
Right.
issue for next year's census that was going to be asked. That is not being
That
asked.
is not going to be on the census.
And the concern was that some people might fear if they have an immigration question or their status is in question that they might not participate.
Correct.
Your goal is, and the Bureau has said,
Yes.
participation is the key.
It is.
A
complete and accurate count is our goal. That question will not be on the census, no.
So how long does it take to fill out the 10?
It will take anywhere from about 10 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on the number of people living in your home. So if it's just you and your spouse, or just you and a couple, two of your children, it will take you about 10, 15 minutes. The more people that are living in your home, obviously, the longer it's going to take.
And how does somebody know that they've completed is there a process where they get a card in the mail, or does it pop up when I shop at Edible Arrangements or Amazon? I get a receipt. Do I get a receipt during this whole process?
You'll receive, if you do the census online, once you complete it, you will get a screen that confirms that your census was submitted. Obviously, otherwise, if you do it on paper, you'll mail it in.
Right, and you can make a copy
Right.
of it. Right.
You can also have the option of doing it via phone.
So what are the big challenges for an accurate count at this stage?
Well, there's a number of things that we have to overcome. One is making sure that the information is out there about the census, what it is, why it's important, the fact that it's safe, safety and security that you've already brought up. That's a big talking point for the general community. And then there's other things we need to overcome. Like right now, there seems to be a significant mistrust in government. So making sure that people are aware of what we're asking, why we're asking
That's been a trend for 40 years.
Correct. Yeah,
It just seems to be
rather
escalating.
combustible right now.
But it seems to be escalating
Yeah.
in the sense of that trust issue. What about
True.
transient, in the sense that a lot of the population, it used to be everybody had a hard line. Now everybody's a cell. I know that impacts pollsters for elections, and they either get them right or they don't get them right.
Right.
A dumb luck. How is the transient population? How do you track that?
Yeah, people move an awful lot now. That's another challenge for us. So we've already done address canvassing. Address canvassing wrapped up mid-October. And we track addresses, and we try to find, wherever there might be a new build, for example, or now people are getting very creative in the places that they live, and the facilities where we may go in and change it from something that might have been industrial before. Now we're going to turn that into residential. So we have a lot of very creative things happening. And we work with towns, with municipalities, with cities to try to figure out where people may be living to make sure that we can track those addresses. And we go out and we confirm those addresses. And then once the census goes out, it's where are you living during that period of time, during that census collection time, and more particularly on April 1st. So you may have moved 3 times this last year. We care about where you're living on April 1st of 2020.
And so among the pieces that was sent to me, there's a constraint on the fiscal side. You only have so many resources to do that.
True.
But it has, separate from the mistrust issue, separate that out, is there over the last couple of decades been a decline in the number of people who just will fill out a form?
No, we haven't seen that.
You haven't, okay.
No.
There are some pieces within this that you always get questions on. One is we have a large prison about 1.5 miles from here. as the crow flies. How do you count those prisoners?
So people who live in prisons, students who live in dorms, people who may live in a retirement community or a nursing home, those people are all counted through something called group quarters count. So we work specifically with the administrators of those facilities to figure out how we're going to enumerate each person in those facilities.
Okay, because I know in New York State about 4 years ago, this has nothing to do with the United States Census Bureau, but it does with the census. They're counting the people in those for redistricting purposes in their home communities, not in the community where they happen to be on April 1st. What about for students? How do you do with students? We don't necessarily have a dorm here. We have Lattimore Hall. But if you're in Tompkins County where there's Cornell or you have a lot of schools in your region,
Sure.
how do you handle students like that?
So students are counted where they're living and sleeping. Well, everyone is counted where they're living and sleeping most of the time. So students are going to be counted at the schools where they're residing. So if they're living in a dorm, they're counted with what's called group quarters count. We work with housing administrators, and we enumerate each person individually in their dorm. One of our hardest to count communities are students who live off campus. Finding where they're living, making sure that they understand that they're supposed to complete the census as well.
I hear that's a problem for the bursars as well.
Yeah.
Most of these colleges as well have them pay their bills. But,
so we need them to understand, though, that they have to count themselves where they're living. They're not counted back at home. So they live and sleep 51%
has that always been
of the
case?
year.
Oh, it has, okay.
Yeah.
And so how about somebody who's in the county jail just on April 1st?
So they're counted then at the county jail on April 1st.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what are you doing? I know you're here. I know Mr. Hanford is out everywhere in Cuyahoga County. So what are you doing to increase local participation? What are you taking on?
We're taking on everything and everyone at this point.
Okay.
I mean, our role as partnership specialists, we're sort of on the ground, hit the ground running, our branch of the Census Bureau. So we've sort of become the face and the voice of census for the time being. Our job is to get out and to make connections and make partnerships with the leaders of the community, and not just the leaders of the community, but the trusted voices in the community, and those who are most influential, which may be the leader of an organization, but those influential voices may also be the person who lives at the end of the street who everybody listens to.
So the influencers.
Correct. So we want to make sure that we are making connections with all of those people. We want to help them get the census message out in their communities. So it's not just about the information about why it's important, but it's also about alleviating all the misinformation that may be out there as well. So we work with your elected officials. We work with the heads of your community-based organizations. We work with your religious leaders and faith-based groups. We work with anyone and everyone who wants to get involved in the census. So whether you're a part of one of those organizations, a church, local government, or you have a block club that you want to get this information out to your neighborhood to make sure that you get a complete and accurate count of your neighborhood, we will come and help you. We will speak to you and with you and disseminate that information to you.
So what do you think that the most common misconception to deter people from participating is?
The ease of the census is one of them. You know, it's a very easy questionnaire to fill out. It's 10 questions. It's very short. It's going to take you less time to fill out your census questionnaire than it is to fill out a cell phone application, for example. You know, the level of information in which we collect also, and you can find samples of the 2020 census questionnaire online right now on our website to see how easy it is and the basics of the questions that we ask.
So one of the other things that you're also working on, and as I said at the beginning of the show, there'll be some pop-ups of scrolling where you're looking for people to look on the website to look for information, but the second piece is you're going to need workers, you need enumerators. So first of all, what is an enumerator?
So the enumerators are the people that go door to door. So come May, when we have a count and a general idea of who's completed the census and where and what neighborhoods, we then will start sending people out door to door in those neighborhoods to the people who are the homes who have not answered the census. And that's what enumerators will do. They'll go door to door.
So is it a full-time job?
It's a part-time position.
For how long?
They're part-time jobs from May until end of July for enumerators. Now, well, I say that.
Perfect for a college student.
Perfect for college students, for retirees, for someone looking for a second job, or for people who just feel like this is their duty.
Their civic duty.
Correct. So now let me clarify one thing though, because while I say May is when our enumerators go out, Don't forget, one of our hardest count communities are the students who live off campus. And May, they're moving out.
Right.
So those communities and areas surrounding universities and colleges, you'll see enumeration start in March.
In March. And what is required of them for background?
For background checks,
Yes.
each person who's hired by the Census Bureau has to go through a complete federal.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said background check as much as what type of qualities, what type of employee.
What do you need to get? What do you
Yeah.
need to have to be considered? You have to be 18 years old. You have to be able to pass a criminal background check. And I will tell you that I do not know what the cutoff is for that. We really encourage everyone to apply because part of the Census Bureau mission is to make sure we're getting people back to work as well.
Okay.
Now, there is a citizenship requirement for employment with the Census Bureau. However, there are waivers that we do offer for people who speak specific languages. We have high need for different languages.
And in the website, there's a list of those that you have forms for and those that you have
Well,
services
so
for.
everything, the application for the positions are all right online, 2020census.gov/jobs. It's one application for all of the positions that we're hiring for right there. You need to have your own email address in order to apply, but you can easily set one up at Gmail or Yahoo. Or
Do you have to drive?
you do not have to be able
So
to
you don't
drive.
have to have a license?
No, you don't. If you do have a license and you are asked to drive, if that's something you're willing to do, then we also reimburse 58 cents a mile.
Because there are some rural areas where you're going to send people out to.
Our goal here, our mission here is to make sure that we're hiring people from the neighborhoods in which they live. So if you have an enumerator knocking on your door, you really want it to be a neighbor. You want it to be someone that you trust and recognize.
And how much do they get paid?
They get paid, enumerators, the minimum base pay for enumerators is $17 an hour.
So besides the American Community Survey and besides this, what else does the Census Bureau do? Gesundheit.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Excuse me. So the Census Bureau is consistently collecting data, collecting and analyzing data. And there are multiple different branches and departments within the Bureau, many of which I'm sorry I cannot speak to.
Okay. But they are providing data all the time.
All the time.
Okay. So I want to finish off. I told you that this is the one question I gave you in advance before we started.
Mm-hmm.
I do this for the United Way when they're doing a public pitch. Tell them why it's important to be part of the process.
Okay. So the Census Bureau is a complete and accurate count of all of the people living and working in the United States. We have one chance every 10 years to get this done and to get it done right. You and the people in your community, the people in your family, the services that you receive, child care, Head Start programs, school lunch programs, HEAP, WIC, all of those programs that keep our community members safe and secure and healthy, all of the monies for that come from census data. Maintenance of your roads, that's census data. Transportation, census data. Things that you may not ever consider come from census data. And if we don't have a complete and accurate count of the people living and working in your neighborhood, in your city, in your town, and in your state, then you will not get your fair share of the funds that come from the federal government. Additionally, it's really important that we hire enough people to complete the census, the 2020 census. We need people from every neighborhood. We need every race, every religion, every ethnic group, every gender. It's important that people who are from your neighborhood are knocking on your door. Friendly faces, people that you know. That's who we want to hire. So please visit the census website, 2020census.gov/jobs to apply. 2020census.gov/jobs will give you one application for multiple different positions. Please visit, please apply, and please come work with me for the 2020 census.
We want to thank Amy BROMBOS, who's the Partnership Coordinator for the United States Census Bureau for this region, for joining us. I hope you come back in the spring, give us an update if that's information you can provide.
I would be happy to.
To talk about this. You will see Christine Hanford, better known as Tina Hanford, around this community, both in Cayuga, Wayne, and Oswego counties. I think Seneca, I think she has as well, to talk about the census, also get partnerships there. This is critical to this community. It is critical to the state, and it is critical for federal programs. So we encourage you to go on the website to look at this and participate. We need high return rates for this information. We'll be back next Tuesday with Cayuga County Health Department's Kathleen Cuddy and Maxine Kinsella to talk about Healthy Mom, Healthy Baby, Healthy Community, a campaign that they are undertaking, and a local veterans effort with Dr. Linda Townsend, former Cuyahoga County Sheriff David Gould, and Vietnam veteran Nick Valenti. Future shows that we'll have in the coming weeks this month will be our city updates from Mayor Michael D. Quill, as well as City Manager Jeff Dygert. They will be on separate days. Lake update from Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council Executive Director Dr. Adam Effler, and former New York State Senator John DeFrancisco will be here discussing his new book, Never Say Never, which does have a section on redistricting or two, and a discussion on Nick's ride with Cuyahoga County Sheriff Brian Shank and Joel Campanella, as well as our annual visit that we finish up at the end of the year with Santa. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your ideas for guests, questions, or thoughts of what we should do programming-wise to Inside Government. It'll be on the front page. You can send them to cozguyguy@aol.com or Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. You have about 1 hour to vote if it's Tuesday the 5th. We encourage you to get to the polls by 9 o'clock. Thank you. Have a good night and a great week.